What up, fam? It's your favorite nephew, your favorite cousin, your favorite uncle, your favorite brother, your favorite father, your favorite son, your best friend's best friend. It's me, Dr. Larry, and welcome to Living For You, the YouTube channel. This is a safe space. It's a positive place in which we come together and we gather and we grow and we become our best present selves. This is what this is about. This is about being the best we, us, me, I, that we can be today. For those of you who are loyal subscribers, welcome back. Hopefully you enjoyed this video like you've enjoyed the others. Those of you who are wanting to subscribe, who's been watching the videos, because some of you have been watching the videos who haven't subscribed, hit the subscribe button. You can even hit the notification bells. I'm not requiring you to hit the notification bells. I'd like for you to hit the notification bells, but at least hit the subscribe button so you can be part of the family. So when I release content, you know when content is coming out and you can gather some of this useful stuff for yourself. I am Dr. Larry Smith. You guys know that. I am a certified life and spiritual coach. And if you want to know more about me, you can go to www.liveforyoucoaching.com. It is a site under construction, so bear with me on that. We're still working some things out. And for those of you who want to follow me on social media and kind of keep up with me day to day, things I do, I'm always posting on Instagram and on Facebook at Dr. Larry Smith on both Instagram and on Facebook. So welcome to the channel to all of you. I love you guys. Let's get into it. Now, so I wanted to get on today because it's been heavy on my heart and on my mind about pathologies, generational pathologies. That word has been coming across my brain almost every day, multiple times in the day. Pathologies, generational pathologies. What's a generational pathology? Technically, definition-wise, whatever, my definition, it's just basically something that has been in your family for generations, that continues and continues, that passed down from your great-grandparents and before, to your grandparents, to your parents, down to you. Maybe you're passing it down to your kids, and maybe your kids are passing it down to their kids if my audience have grandchildren. So there is, you know, a lot going on there. And 90% of the time, they're not healthy things. They're things that should have been nipped in the bud generations ago. However, I always tell people, ancestors get it right. They got things right, but then there were things that our ancestors got wrong. And many of the things that they got wrong because they didn't have access. They didn't have understanding. They didn't have access to knowledge, access to awareness. They didn't really know. Many of them were just doing things kind of instinctively, as opposed to doing things from an educated perspective. Those of us who are ancestors of slaves and former slaves, we know that they weren't even allowed to be educated and to be literate. And many people, not just black people, a lot of people back then just weren't literate. And so therefore, illiteracy actually aids in ignorance, right? However, when you come generations down the line and some of that pathological behavior still occurs, it's no longer because of ignorance due to illiteracy or due to lack of knowledge or due to lack of access. It's willful at this point. And there are a lot of things that I am seeing in my community, in my family, amongst my friends, that I know are pathological familiar patterns that need to be broken. ASAP, as in yesterday. Like yesterday, last year, 10 years ago, they needed to be gone. And we have to understand that, and I've heard this, and I've probably even said this at some point in my life, that, well, it's just what we do. It's what our parents did. It's what our grandparents did. It's just who we are. And I've heard that in reference to toxic behaviors, toxic beliefs, religion, a whole bunch of other things. And people who just use that excuse as a means to continue a bad, toxic, perpetual, pathological behavior or action. And at the end of the day, that's not legitimate. Because if you know better, you do better. If you know better, you show up better. You're able to go. Like, for example, for the longest time, we had many beliefs around religion that were limited. But now we have access to actually go and get the interpretation of the Bible and read it for ourselves in the actual language interpretation of what the languages were. So to tell us this is wrong, this is right, this is how it goes, this is what it says, no longer is sufficient because we can look it up for ourselves. There was once a time when only preachers had access to that information. information. And if you go even further back to the Middle Ages and a little time after, right before the fall of the Roman Empire, the only people who had access to that were the clergy. But now we have open access. It is literally a new world. And so in this new world, no information can be given without people being able to go and follow up to figure out whether or not the information that is given is sound, accurate, true, reliable. I study history. You guys know that. My background is history. I am a history professor by trade, history slash sociology, slash social studies professor, but my background is in history. And in history, to consider yourself a historian, you can't just go out and read and write any kind of history and say this is true. It has to be reliable, credible, accurate history. I can talk about, for example, George Washington up and down from a credible perspective. Like if I say George Washington had slave teeth in his mouth, people are like, and that shocks a lot of people. But that's based on historical fact. You can actually go to the museum at Mount Vernon and actually see the slave teeth still in his dentures. And the DNA analysis showed that the teeth came from slaves. And we have a ledger documentation of him purchasing slave teeth. So there's evidence to support those claims. I can make that claim and people are shocked. But if I make that claim and people are shocked, I just say go do the additional research that I've done. There's reliable source material to add credibility, reliability, and fact to what I am saying. It's not just made up. And so we now have access to do that with more ease than they've had in years prior. And so therefore certain pathological beliefs and certain pathological thoughts and ways of doing things, if they are unhealthy, they can be broken and we can learn more about them. One of the pathological things that I see often is not wanting to go and get therapy. Not wanting to go see a psychiatrist or a psychologist or even a life coach for that matter amongst my people sometimes. And I'm talking specifically about Black people and people in my family and people I know. Because there is an apprehension, a phobia, a fear, or something about going to a therapist. However, we're learning more and more that it's healthy to talk to somebody outside of your sphere, a neutral party, about your emotional state so you can be in a healthy emotional state and deal with your emotions in a healthy, productive, and resourceful way. So there's nothing wrong with therapy. We know that now. But if we had gone back generations before, they were not as inclined to go see a therapist or a counselor or a coach to help them deal with issues. They just suppressed and really just dealt with. Really just went through it, just went through the motions or whatever and not really deal with stuff. And we saw many times that some pathological, toxic, dangerous, abusive, all kinds of other things came out of them not really dealing with their psychological stuff, emotional stuff in a healthy way. So now we know that you should go to therapy and it's okay. You're not going to be broken. It doesn't mean that you can't handle your problems. It's just another way to handle your problems, a more healthier way to handle your problems. Toxic beliefs. A man is the head of the family and wife is supposed to clean and cook and the man is the dominant and he's the aggressor and we know now that first of all, that's never been feasible post-slavery in the Black community. Both men and women had to work and had to lead households and had to take responsibilities because sometimes the man was taken away or went away, or sometimes economically both had to work. So the archaic idea of man at the top of the pyramid and everybody underneath them in this hierarchy kind of feudal system in the house, that's European people. And that's people who can afford to do that. And many times throughout history post-slavery, Black folks just couldn't have that type of luxury. And so the idea of saying that this is how things must be when we've survived and we've made it and we've done fine with it being different shows you that that's a pathological, archaic way of and toxic way of thinking that is unuseful. And I always tell people, if it's an unuseful thought, if it's an unuseful action, if it's unuseful stuff, if it's an unuseful person to your life, why do you keep it? At some point, it becomes a burden. When things are no longer used and they're just there holding weight. I mean, think about your house. When we say we have to spring clean, sometimes we have to life spring clean. And we have to go through our house and throw away things we no longer even look at in years' times, that we hadn't seen in years. It's just been there. Now you have tons and tons of stuff that's just adding burden and clutter and chaos that needs to be cleaned. So it's every so often it is good, therapeutic, and healthy to go and clean literally things that you hold. That works the same with emotions. It is good to go and clean thoroughly emotions that no longer serve you, or beliefs that no longer serve you, or people that are no longer adding to your life. Your friendship should be adding, not subtracting, and not holding down, right? So that is that, and relationships. These are things that are just healthy to do. So it is important to go back and do inventory within your life to try to clear out clutter. That is very important when it comes to pathological generational stuff. I'll be honest. I believe that stuff that was really the anchor for a lot of people in the past is kind of useful now. I'll give you a good example of that, right? The conversation, a conversation that you might say, for example, is religion as being the center of your life. You guys know I'm spiritual. You guys know I believe in spirit, and I've studied different religions and all that. But there was a time in the past where people who looked like me, religion was all they had, and that was the center of their lives. But when you think about the situation, the places for meeting, the places to get registered to vote, the places to get health care, the places to get food when you couldn't afford food, all that stuff was the church within the Black community. So literally the church was actually a central piece of the life. In many of the protests and a lot of the leaders and stuff, they came from the church. So yes, the church had a central place in your life. And so, but people took that as meaning all of the knowledge that makes you who you are. Everything that you use that is useful in this life has to come from the church. And that's how they did it for many years. But we know that now there's many things you can find useful for development in life. You don't necessarily have to go to church for food anymore. You don't go to the church for voting anymore. You don't go to the church for the latest information. You can get that right from your phone. Right from your phone. So the church doesn't serve a purpose as the centerpiece of a person's life like it may have 150 or less years ago. And that's just one example. There's clothes, there's trends, there's beliefs, there's fashions, there's thoughts, things that are no longer useful. Like I might sit here and say, well, I'm going to go to the card catalog. If I said I was going to go to a card catalog to do research, some of you might look at me and say, what? Why? We no longer use those. And some of you might even look at me and say, what is a card catalog? Why? Because it no longer exists like it existed before. We could just Google stuff on the internet. I can get books shipped to my house from Amazon tomorrow if I order them right now. And for those of you who don't know what a card catalog is, it's for us who was over a certain age. When we go to the library, when we was looking for a specific book, they kept it on record in this like kind of drawer thingy, where we pull out and we find the book alphabetically that we're looking for, and they had a number, and we'll go look for that number on the book and on the wall, and would find our book that way. And I know that seems like a lot of work, and looking back on it with what we have now, that is a lot of work, but it's now we're more convenient. So we just Google it, Google the name of the book, and wherever resources, whatever stores, wherever places, and 9 times out of 10 Amazon has it. We can get the book really, really quickly, a lot quickly than we could have back in the day. So those are for my people born before, I would say born after 2000, who probably don't even know what a card catalog is. We stopped using them officially in my life in like 2005. So the point is, and I was in college and we were using for the last time the card catalog before everything was mechanized and computerized. But that's just a small example of showing that if things can be out of touch, if clothes and things and ways and processes of doing things can be out of touch, what makes you think mindsets and beliefs don't go out of touch? There are certain beliefs that are universal, that will ring true today, that rang true yesterday, that's going to ring true tomorrow. Like, for example, love is a powerful energy. It doesn't matter if you say love in the 1500s or love in the 2000s, teens, 20s, 30s, 50s. Love is a powerful energy. That's a universal truth. The sky is above. The earth is below. Those are universal truths. However, other things aren't universal and they change. And so sometimes in our families, there are belief systems, there are thoughts, there are ways of seeing, there are ways of being, machismo, not going to the doctors, not getting therapy, seeing, family arguments that's been happening for generations about the same issues, the perceptions of roles in families and roles in marriages, and how people love each other between a man and a woman only, and what actually constitutes a man, masculine, and a woman, female. That's all of this stuff is constantly changing. Even the fact of how important my race is. See, right now, race matters because people still attach themselves to it. And race does matter because it's connected to my culture and my customs and things I've grown up being and knowing. And other people can learn from that. But the idea of my race mattering as an important factor to who I am is becoming less and less and less important. And that's a good thing, because the further we get from that, the further we get from things like racism and xenophobia and just hating people because of what they look like. Because that's the complete, obnoxious way of seeing things. I'm not going to just pick up a book and say, I hate this book because of the cover. It doesn't work that way. If I don't read the book, then I don't know what the book's about. So if I don't get to know a person beyond what they look like on the outside, then I don't know what that person's about, so I can't hate them for that. It's irrelevant. So even racism is a pathological generational thing that needs to go the hell away. Let it go. Let it go. We have so many things within our own families, and I'm sure you can think of many, that no longer serves your present life. Beliefs, thoughts, ideologies, religions, patterns. If they're not serving any useful purpose, why are you holding on to it? If they're not adding to your life or adding to the lives of those around you, why are you holding on to it? If they're causing a problem, if they're problematic and they're actually doing harm and damage to you and to those around you, why are you holding on to it? Let it go. Let it go. If a flower was always concerned about being a seed, it would never be a flower. At some point, that seed has got to retain the water and do the work that it needs to do on the inside to bloom and become a flower. And at some point, even that flower becomes useless because it's going to die, as all things die, and this is including humans. But there is a knowledge known that even when that flower dies, the seeds that it produces will create another generation of something new. And so therefore there's always going to be a continuity of things from the past within the things in the present, and that includes people. But the difference is, as that flower continues to bloom, it's going to get stronger and more adaptable to the environment around it, and it's going to last longer and sustain itself longer. Same thing with you. Same thing with humans. As time goes on, we should be getting better. We should be getting stronger. We should be getting more present. We should be getting more powerful. But you cannot do that if you are continuing to hold on to things in the past that are no longer useful in the present. It is impossible. Let it go. Let it go. Because some of these generational pathologies are doing more harm to the entire community and to the entire world than they are useful. Our ancestors knew a lot and have imparted and given us a lot, but they weren't right about everything. Some things they got wrong, and now we have access and information to know what those things were and to no longer do them. That's it. That's it. Hopefully you got a lot from that. Hopefully there was something there that sparked and spoke to you, and that you're able to grow from it and begin to break some of the pathologies that are no longer useful to you. As I always say, keep learning, keep coming, keep returning. There's things out there. Actually, on a site called Udemy.com, I actually have an African American history course. The first half that I put together is called United States History in Black. You will find that very useful if you want to know more about Black history. I realize a lot of people want to learn that, so that's a resource. And I'm going to complete this. I'm working to complete the second part to put that out there too, amongst other courses that I am creating as well. So, so go out there and check that out if you want to know more about Black history. No matter who you are, it's for everybody. And as I always say, I love you with the love of Christ, the love of God, the love of the Spirit, the Buddha love, the highest love that you can possibly have. And I'll see you in the next video.